Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Comics Rant. I am your host, Arvin Bautista, and I'm coming to you from my house, where it is going nuts outside. There's a lot of wind and rain. It has been this way for a few weeks, and it is totally destroying my fence. But that's why we have comic books. Then I can stop thinking about that. So today is a weird episode. At least the comic section part is kind of weird. I'm actually going to talk about the books that I haven't had a chance to read. Okay, the backstory of this is I went to the comic book store on, I think after New Year's, so like mid-January, right, this year, 2023. I picked up my stash, and I realized I haven't picked up my books for 6 months, for half a year. I've been paying it. Fortunately, the comic book store lets me pay through PayPal, so I've been paying it as it goes. But my books have been sitting there for 6 months, and the comic shop owner actually asked, "Why haven't you picked up your stuff?" He was a little angry, but why haven't you picked up your stuff? And I didn't really have a good answer. It started because I was wondering if people were coming in, what was the hottest book, and so on and so on. And his honest answer was that nobody had been coming in to pick up their stuff in probably the same amount of time that I haven't picked up my stuff. So I've been thinking about it. I don't really have an answer. The closest that I could get was I just don't read as much. And maybe I feel like it's specific to me because I've been drawing more. I've been either playing games more, drawing more, definitely drawing more so I can get my own comic book stuff done. So I don't have time to read comics. And even now that I have my stash, I have not gone through this whole pile yet. It might be as simple as that. I'm not sure. But anyway, let's go through the stuff that I have and have not read. So that I got this. It's not even a big pile for 6 months, right? I just don't do monthly comics as much anymore. But let's go through it. So, of course, I'm a Superman fan, and the height of my collecting, my most memorable moments of collecting Superman was when he died. And John Byrne era and all the way past that. So this was a no-brainer. Great cover from Ivan Hayes, I think is his name. Totally mimics that old school Superman, Death of Superman series. And this is Dan Jurgens and Brett Breeding on inks, and they're doing their best Dan Jurgens-y, Brett Breeding-y stuff. And it's all the teams that I grew up with, so it was really fun to see. This is total nostalgia buy, right? Like, that is their target market. I'm not sure if I'm doing anybody any favors buying this book, because I'm part of the problem. I'm aging out of this industry. So it's Dan Jurgens, Jerry Ordway, Roger Stern, Louise Simonson. These are the guys that I was reading, and they are pulling out all the stops, right? Like, this is about as old school and yet as good a work that they could produce. Some pretty cool stuff going on. A lot of parallels, right? Go on the book. But now he's got his kid, which is kind of cool. Jonathan Kent is there. Lois, they're acting still in a family dynamic this time around. Great pinups by Clayman. Tom Grummett, whose stuff I loved, when he was doing his Superboy run. Jerry Ordway writing it. I wish Jerry Ordway drew it, but it's good. This is actually almost exactly the team that was working at that time. Great pinup by Lee Weeks. Simonson, Jackson Geiss, yeah, heck yeah. Oh, Butch Geiss, sorry. Roger Stern writing. Roger Stern's the man. I loved a lot of his Superman stuff. You got Fabio Moon drawing pinups here. And it's almost like the stories, a lot of these stories are happening as if they're like little shorts that happened in between the stories that I read. So definitely for people that were reading that book. And there were a lot of people that read that book. So not a stretch to try to sell this book to me. I actually read this one. Loved it. I enjoyed it. It's Death of Superman. Next one. I read this one. So I actually have been going through my pile. Maybe I'm lying that I haven't been reading this stuff. But this one is Superman Space Age by Mark Russell and the Allreds. And let me just say, the art is freaking fantastic. The Allreds are like on firing on full cylinders here. Like color and, it's a lot more detailed than the usual Mike Allred stuff that I know. Like he really pushed himself on this series, and it's fantastic. Mark Russell is one of my favorite writers. I got into his stuff when he wrote, I think, Prez for The New 52, which is like this reboot of this old 70s comic of a teenager becoming president. And I thought like the social commentary that he was doing with that series was fantastic. There's a little bit of that going on in here because it's Superman in the 60s. In the 60s? Yeah, well, the 60s bring that in the world. He sets Superman in the 60s when he starts, and then he kind of travels. We follow him as he ages and goes through all these different time periods, So there's a lot of historical background going on in here that they're operating in, Watergate, Lois and Clark and Watergate, and all this stuff. Fantastic art, And then, of course, the Justice League shows up more in the second issue than in the first. Which I have mixed feelings on because I'm always like, just make a Superman story. I don't need like Green Lantern or all these guys. I mean, it is fun to see them, don't get me wrong. But I'm always such a Superman purist. But, it's true. You cannot separate Superman from everybody else in the DC universe, right? He came first, so he inspired all these people, and that's part of the story, right? He was part of this time period when you needed these heroes. Anyway, I only have the first two. I think the third one came out already. And it's just really good. So story-wise, I really love the story. I don't know if you guys have seen any of the other episodes, but I'm a Zack Snyder fan. So, Snyder Cut all the way and all that kind of stuff. Try not to sound too offensive to anybody here, but, I love his stuff. It's really good stuff. The story points that they came up with Goyer and Jeff Johns, right? For Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman and all that stuff, even seeping into Wonder Woman, I thought were on point. And those same story points are in here. And what I like is, I'm not even sure if Mark Russell is a fan of Zack Snyder stuff. Most likely not, since a lot of like the comic book people aren't really fans. That's just my guess. But I think my point is the movies were so took from the same content, right? The same stories, the same Superman stuff, the same character, and kind of put him in the real world and try to figure out how would Superman react to the real world. Spoilers, they get married. You got the Anti-Monitor here, Harbinger. It's crazy, right? And I love that it has the same approach. It comes to the same conclusions, even with the Kents, that the Zack Snyder movies did, right? Because you had good people writing it and helping Zack Snyder figure this stuff out. And I like that they came to the same conclusions about Superman and are exploring these themes as well. And there's a lot of books that do it, right? J. Michael Straczynski stuff and all that kind of stuff. So, I think I'm still a little hurt when people say, those movies don't have anything to do with the comic books. But they do, and they're still reverberating now because it's pulling from the same stuff. I'll shut up now. Anyway, and another book I got was just random books. I kind of like going to the comic book store and getting random books. I have no idea what they're about. I'm like jumping in on the third issue of these two books, Flavor Girls and Heart Eyes. Let's start with Flavor Girls. I love the art. It's like this animated Sailor Moon-y style Power Rangers story. These crazy aliens come and these girls get these mysterious powers that are flavor based. Well, more like food based. Well, this girl's like pineapple and garlic. I mean, it's dynamic. It's fun. I love the action. It's just cool. I like the colors. They're light, pleasant. Nice color theory going on here. A lot of anime influence, and it just works, right? And I always like seeing how these people can. So I think there's only 3 of these for this first volume. This is like some double-sized one. It was enjoyable. I actually found the other 2 on Hoopla, and I borrowed, the digital book so I could catch up to 3. Good stuff. Here's the other one, Heart Eyes. So I read this one too. I totally am lying that I'm saying that I'm not reading this stuff. Heart Eyes. Okay. Wait, I'm not totally lying. I haven't read this one. But, I just flipped through it and I was like, oh, looks cool. Looks like Yannick Paquette, that Adam Hughes, J.H. Williams III lineage of artwork. It looks great, right? It looks great. It's this horror thing going on. I'm just jumping genres on you guys here. I guess it's still like a girl fighting crazy monsters, but the style is leaning on horror more. People burning, not really for kids. Good stuff, right? So I just flipped through this. I haven't finished it. That must be a spoiler for me, but that's okay. I just wanted to pick it up. Hopeless and Ibanez. And Diaz doing colors, and his cover looks cool. Tom King's book. I'm a Tom King fan, so I'll pretty much read anything that he puts out, and I do enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot. But his stuff is. I'm glad that it's on Black Label stuff now. Most of his stuff, because I think people wouldn't understand like some of the liberties that he takes when it's in continuity. So I think now he's a little freer. I think he started it with Batman, Catwoman, and then, Human Target is great. Even the Supergirl book that he wrote is really awesome. Maybe people are okay figuring out like, oh, this is not really that character in the continuity that I'm reading. So the idea here, I think, is all the Kirby books. He's trying to do all the Kirby books that came out, all the crazy ones. So it's I guess not all the Kirby books, but because Creeper's in here, but the Dingbats of Danger Street are here. And it's quite mature. Okay, I'm lying. It's not the Kirby books, but that's one of them. Warlord shows up here. I don't want to spoil too much of anything here, but it's like gritty, real spin on these characters that nobody really pays attention to anymore. Starman, right? The old school Starman, Metamorpho, and then Atlas. Like, what is going on with this book? But it is great. He starts it off with a bang. It's very mature. Again, if everybody's saying like the problem with comics nowadays is that the audience is just aging out and people aren't tapping into the younger audience, this is an example of that book. But it is awesome. So, it is awesome. I'm 47 years old and I'm enjoying it. It's like an HBO Max version of these characters. Fantastic stuff. If you like Tom King stuff, pick it up. If you don't, you should probably stay away. So I finally got the last arc of this, which is We Only Find Them When They're Dead, by Al Ewing and Simone DeMeo. This is from Boom. So most of my reading nowadays, right, this is like monthly comics, right, is usually like in these smaller chunks. I can't do like long runs of whatever, X-Men, even Superman, right? Like those were one-shots, the ones that I got. But this is a sci-fi, like epic series, sprawling series where the main, the pitch is that it starts off with this character in the future, all resources are kind of gone, right? Typical. And so people have to get their resources from the bodies of these dead Jack Kirby style gods. Yeah, so that's awesome. What's interesting here is Al Ewing is a really freaking awesome writer. I liked his stuff in Invincible Hulk? No, Immortal Hulk. And here, this is his own thing, so I'm kind of glad and happy for him that he has got that. And Simone DeMeo's art is freaking fantastic. Here, let me flip through some of this stuff. Anyway, so this is the third arc of it, like, you know, in the traditional trade paperback sense, like it's 11 to 15, and it's great because it keeps progressing the story forward. So characters in the first arc, there's that dead god, may have died, right? Or they had a kid and their kid grew up, or there's a character from there that got preserved, like, you know, or whatever, is living for a long time, or so all that kind of stuff he follows, or even just like following the political outcome of whatever happened in the first arc, right? And he can jump around. So there's been 3 of these, and I think it ends here. So it's perfect for me, right? Since I don't have time to read all these longer things. But I still haven't even read any of these. So 11, 12, 13, and 14 I have not read. 15, right? I haven't finished it yet. I will get to it. I'm making my way. It is March, I gotta admit. And I still haven't read these since I picked them up in January. Okay, and lastly, when I went to the comic book store, I got this bad boy, Echolands, which is the hardbound edition of the first volume that J.H. Williams and Hayden Blackman with great... I don't know how Dave Stewart colors this stuff, but he's a freaking genius. Todd Klein letters, right? You know, this is like a dream team of people here. I actually saw it as a monthly, but I passed it up. I'm totally the problem with this industry. I just trade weighted. And what a great trade, by the way. So anyway, so this trade that I got, it's too big for the camera to really pick it all up, but you know, it's J.H. Williams kicking butt. It looks great. It all looks great. And I've only read like the first issue, I think, of this. And this is some crazy stuff. And I love that it's in this crazy widescreen format, which I also loved in The Private Eye. I'm not sure if this was done because it was online. I'm probably wrong. I'm definitely making stuff up. But it also came with this print. Cool print that was signed. How cool is that? It was just on the shelf. You know, I didn't even have the comic shop owner pull it for me. I just saw it and I was like, okay, instant buy. Unread, yes, I'm a moron, but super cool premise with like basically multiverse stuff cranked up, and only, you know, J.H. Williams can present it like this in the different styles as they interact with each other, which is cool. Great bits of storytelling, super amazing art, just stunning. What the heck? Why haven't I read this? Anyway, it's just stunning stuff. And that's Echolands. So, anyway, those are all the books that I need to get through, or have gotten through, from my pile. I'm still working on Sorry, I'm like turning around here. I'm still working on my answer to the comic book guy, and I don't, the comic shop owner. His comic book store is called Mission Comics and Art, by the way, in San Francisco. Leaf is the guy's name. He remembers my name, even though I'm not sure how he does it. Even through the pandemic, I was wearing a mask going to the comic book store, and he would know it was me, which makes me feel even worse. But he knows I'm like this DC head, so he pulls all the Superman stuff for me. Really nice guy. I told him, like, I picked up these two from another store. I won't name it, so it's not like I'm bashing on it. But I went into the store and I felt kind of bad, because the guy running the register, I'm not sure if he owns it or not, but he seemed kind of uninterested in comics, a little standoffish. He tried to help out, but it wasn't very friendly. It wasn't very warm, right? Not like Leaf's comic book store. And I'm not even saying like that place was terrible. It's just it was kind of like what I would expect a comic book store would be. Like, the owner would be kind of like down on comics, which is kind of rough, right? Because it's not like they make a lot of money doing this, running the stores. But what was cool? So I went in there. I picked these up. I don't really pick up a lot of books there because I go to my regular store. But I struck up a conversation with him, asking him what the best book was that was selling, and he thought I was like from a publisher like Diamond and Penguin Random House. I don't know why, but I was just curious, just to strike up a conversation. And that's when I was like, oh, he really isn't into these comics anymore. He's like, well, I don't know, Marvel Comics. And I was like, no, like which one? Like which comic book is selling for you? And he was like, I don't know, Spider-Man. Like was his typical response. And this is where you get the vibe like, oh man, this guy really doesn't care. So I forget what I asked him, but he did go on a tangent, and he started talking about like how he's more into the sword and sorcery stuff. And once he started talking about that, he totally lit up. He loved Conan and all that kind of stuff. He even talked about like some of the stuff I don't know, like the IP was picked up by Marvel and lost it, and then they picked it up again or whatever. But he was really into that, and that was kind of cool to see that he got into it. But also, if you think about it, kind of sad, because there's not a lot of that stuff out there for him to be jazzed up about, right? And it's just not the genre that's kicking in. Or maybe there's not enough of that genre kicking in. Because I know there's sword and sorcery books out. Maybe it's just not Conan. I just called him like Conan O'Brien. But anyway, it does good to just talk to these shop owners and see where their head's at, about comics, right? The state of comics. And I think maybe that's why I kind of got jazzed up about talking these books that I haven't read, because I was listening to a podcast that was saying a lot of the books, comic shop owners are frustrated because there isn't one book that they can go, this is the seller, right? They have limited space to sell any of these things. And what's coming out is that all these indie books, probably like this one, we only find them when they're dead. There's a lot of them, but not like a huge audience for each one. But because there's so much, they can't possibly display all these books, right? With just 2 people reading it from that store. But I think because there's so many titles coming out, so many genres, right? The horror genre, I'm totally getting into that, with James Tynion stuff. Sci-fi, right? This is like hardcore sci-fi, this kind of stuff I'm getting into, like, this stuff is kind of very specific, even to Danger Street, right? Like, it's super specific to these smaller target audiences, which I think for me is awesome, because I do love finding these weirdo comics I've never heard before. And I'm getting older, so a lot of the superhero stuff, I'm, not like they're terrible. They are good. I've read a few of them. I'm just not so into as much anymore. I'm kind of getting into all that indie stuff, or even the smaller publisher stuff, limited runs, right? Or limited series. So I don't, this is it. This is all I had in my box waiting for me for 6 months. I mean, not even this, right? It was just this. And I think a couple Human Target issues. Let's get back to the Echolands again while I'm droning on and on. So at least you're looking at something cool. So maybe that's my answer. I am that market that buys all the small, kitschy things, random issues that I don't really stick with, right? Just like looking at the art. So I'll just buy an issue of this here, issue of that there. I'm not really consistent or predictable, which is kind of bad for comic shops, right? Holy cow, look at that. That's just awesome. Yeah, in any case, looking at this stuff, I'm like, yeah, why am I not buying this stuff on a monthly basis, right? The other thing is I know it's going to be on trade. They just drool over the page. It's going to be on trade, so I want to, this J.H. Williams III stuff, this great stuff. I don't want this in hardbound. I don't want it with staples on it. Or I'll come back and I'll buy it, right? I'll buy one issue and be like, oh, this series is good. I'm just going to wait until the rest of the trade comes out. And then, like everybody, I will forget and never pick it up. So yeah, part of the problem. In any case, that is the end of this segment. This is quite long. Truly a comic rant. But I hope some of this stuff inspires you guys. Hopefully you saw some of the books I didn't read and, you're jazzed up about them. Get you to read some of this stuff, Try to spread the goodness of comics as we're flipping through all these books and get you jazzed up. All right, well, I will see you guys in the next segment. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the drawing portion of Comics Rant, and I am I finished the first page of The Shack of Darkness. It's a little remake of my college comic book project that I took in class, and I am having a ton of fun. Kind of getting all nostalgic about this stuff and where I went to school and the stories that I told. My memory is kind of terrible, so I think these comic books short stories that I found that I'm trying to redo into its own book that range from my freshman year, or maybe even my sophomore year, freshman year to senior year, let's say, when I was in college. I went to school in the Rhode Island School of Design, so this first page is actually at the RISD Green. RISD is the short, cute name the students give Rhode Island School of Design. And that's like the little sculpture that's there. I actually can't remember the name of the sculpture, but it's just there, and it's a very distinguished landmark. And I think in freshman year I used to sit there, but not for too long. After a while, it just, I'm not cool enough to sit there and look awesome and throw the frisbee around. But I wanted it to open. This short story was about me in my apartment and being all dark and my fears of darkness and so on and blah, blah, blah. It was an exercise to show space and mood and timing and all this kind of stuff in my comic book class. In the original one, I don't think I said it in the rain, but I did want to do that because I like drawing rain and trying to figure out how to draw rain. It's one of my little things right now. It's just so much fun. I loved it when John Romita Jr.
would draw it in almost anything that I would see him draw, in Daredevil and Spider-Man, and I think in a Batman story, or maybe a pinup. I'm not sure. But then in college, I also saw Will Eisner do it, and he's the best at it. Everything just looks really heavy and wet and crappy. He did such a good job depicting rain, and he would work it into his paneling, and the way that all his pages would flow would also be kind of this wet kind of texture, and I just love it. I like trying to ape it and try to figure out how I can put my spin on it. So this opening shot is exactly that. It's a rainy day, rainy night at the RISD campus, and I'm gonna, in the pages coming up to this, it'll be kind of like this, I guess, tracking shot, for lack of a better word, of us going through that area that I would walk to get back to my apartment complex. Let's get into how the time lapse on how I did this, and then I can kind of show you what it's about. Okay, so you can see here that I just took a Google Maps photo. Kind of dug around there. It was kind of fun. I went on the satellite view and kind of went through my streets, the old streets and all that. I took a screenshot of the one that I kind of liked the most, and then I still kind of pushed it a little bit in perspective to get the look that I wanted. And I think I'm basically inking over like a photo. I'm just on an inking kick. I don't want to draw anything. I just want to ink the crap out of everything. So I saw like these trees. You know, the idea for this shot, this opening shot, was that it would just be one panel to set up everything, set up the mood. And I did not really expect to break this tree out of the panel. But you can see I kind of just was like, oh, hey, that might look cool. And then I just scaled it up, make it break the borders of the panel. It was nice and creepy looking. And then I just start inking. I'm not even thinking of anything. I'm just inking. Rain is a lot of fun because it's just this directional, like straight down kind of thing. I mean, you could do any kind of direction, but it's just really lines that are like almost parallel to each other. And I kind of have to figure out how this kind of like hatching rain line work is going to affect being on other surfaces. So you see there, like once I was drawing it, I kind of found like, oh, this tree needs to be bigger. The panel needs to be in a nicer spot on the page. So I moved it down. And then I was just like, all right, I'll just keep drawing more tree on the on the top. So it looks even creepier. And it breathes a little better. I think it's a nicer intro to draw the eye down into that panel, into the scene. And I'm kind of like working off of that as if it's like also like rain, right? Like these, and trying to make it creepy, these creepy branches coming from a blank white of the page down into the panel. This is like way way down in advance. So I have 4 short stories that I'm planning to redo and collect it all into a book. Hopefully I get there. Anyway, the last story, interestingly enough, it doesn't look anything like this, is not related to anything with this story, but it is kind of off of this senior degree project that I did for animation, and a pinup that I did later on. And the pinup that I did later on of that senior degree animation story kind of has a tree in it. And it's like this graphic tree that kind of looks like this. So I didn't really plan it that way, but it seems to be good bookends for all these stories that I'm going to compile together. So here I'm just going back into the photo, and you can see, because I've moved everything, that it doesn't line up. So I kind of have to fudge a few things. I'll put it back into the place right there so it's like correct. But certain things will be off, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be totally accurate to what it was. It's more like the memory of it. I mean, I don't think it really rained this crazy there. When I was there, it snowed like crazy. But just to add to the mood and the creep factor of this scene that I have to set. So it was nice doing this. Again, it's like a nostalgia project. So kind of drawing this area is like almost as well for me, because my memory is terrible. It really is like going down memory lane. Part of the fun with doing this kind of rain is there are a lot of fun mistakes that happen, or they're not really mistakes, just things that kind of crop up when you're hatching something, right? Like the way I'm doing my hatching, it's almost like I'm filling in a black space, a black air, just filling it all with black. But because I'm not perfect when I'm hatching all this stuff, there's going to be gaps that show up in between these black spaces. And that's where you can that's where I would push and pull, like how much of this should be stark black, how much should be kind of gray, right? Or in the case of rain, it's fun because the black will stop on surfaces, and that's you can kind of see it here, zoomed in better, that that's the part that mimics raindrops hitting a surface, right? When it becomes white, or where the feathering line ends, where it tapers off, right? So it's a stark black on top, and it comes down, and right before it hits the top of a roof, or really any surface, I stop it and leave the white so you can see it more. And I liked how John Romita Jr. would do it. I liked how Will Eisner would do it. So I would draw, like, every now and then, like, little bits of the rain, like raindrops on that surface, just to kind of add to it, add to the wetness, I guess, of everything. And then once it hits a surface, the fun part is I'm thinking about, like, okay, now the water is coming down that surface, coming off the roof, gonna hit this window, and then the cycle begins again, right? And then now I have water dripping down from a ledge onto the window sill, and then you can do the same thing, same technique, same everything. Just a few seconds ago, you could see me block in like a big amount of black in there. I think as I'm like hatching this, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of hatching. Maybe I need like more dark black areas. And it does work out a bit. I know, so right here now, it's time-lapse, but I am actually thinking of what happens to this rain when it hits the lawn, the grass. Like, what does that look like? I don't know. So part of that is really fun. And then what happens when that water runs off the grass into the sidewalk down there? So there's funny things that'll occur, because as I'm working, I'll see like, oh, hey, there's like that big gap of white. And you can kind of see it's kind of striped on the bottom. And that acts like as the water. Later on, as I'm just hatching everything. So the grass, I ended up really doing like this very short, almost stipply technique. And you can see like I've actually drawn in like these little ripples. Like, I love Brian Bolland's The Killing Joke. It opens up. If you don't know the book, it's like what he's known for, basically. It's like a Batman Joker story. But it opens up on a rainy night, and his shot is the ground with ripples. Looks great. Looks fantastic. It's like this abstract kind of thing. So I don't know. I'm stupid. I was like, hey, I'll put some ripples on the grass. Grass won't really have ripples on it, Arvin, because it's soft. But what ends up happening is it gives that grass like this texture. Like, I try to do it. I try to make it so it's like this ripply circle, right? And then I fill in the stippling around it. and then I saw it wasn't working. When it's like the stark white circle on the lawn. So what I ended up doing was using it as a texture that made it different from the concrete. And I think it kind of worked out. Like, it made it look more interesting. There was a pattern on the grass that, while it's not real, it really set it apart from all the other crazy texture that I put in that panel. And I just had fun. It wasn't there's I'm trying to make things stand out, like the tree in the foreground. Obviously it's breaking out of the panel, so that's an easy one, but adding more whites to it. But I'm just having a great amount of time trying to figure out texture to lay down onto what is grass, what is concrete, what is a tree, what is bark, and so on and stuff like that. So I'm working my way around the page, and I like how I'm getting these bands of white. So you can see like the water runoff on the bottom left. Even the sidewalk is there. And the good part is, now that I work digitally, I can make layers, right? I can make layers, and I can totally overwork something, which is probably what everybody will say when they see this, and kind of gauge like, should the sidewalk have more texture, or maybe not, and I can turn it off and it's all right. It's not it's not messing anything up. Or like sometimes I'll use that extra layer to kind of gray something out. I did it in the first few pages, like with the darkness and all that kind of stuff, because I didn't know if I could push something back without making it completely black. Like, how much hatching can I put in there so it's not completely black, but it's not exactly white? So those extra layers that I can kind of jam on top of the drawings are super helpful. I can turn on and off. I do not change the transparency of the layers. I still want it to be strictly hatching that controls if something is gray or white or black, and and I push it that way. The sky, like what I've figured out from how Will Eisner does it, and I think John Romita Jr. does it too, is that the dark of the rain starts from the very top, and then everything tapers as it comes down to the ground. And it's a good effect. Like, you would think it would be the opposite, right? Because water would be more clear and more white, and blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And you would try to draw all the lines of the water as they hit the ground. And then you'd think because all the water would be down on the ground and it would be darker. But it's kind of the opposite. And it gives a lot of like nice atmosphere, like darkness, basically. A lot of nice darkness to the piece or anything that you're working on. And that's totally what I'm doing here. I'm going for that creepy darkness. So I think you might be able to see it here. There's pieces of it where I break through the panel and I let the white of the background page, right, go into the panel and break the borders. Sorry, that's what I'm saying. Break the borders of the panel with white. And it was fun. Again, like, I did not really plan that. I'm kind of more like a draw everything in the square kind of guy. But it kind of helped the rain. It made it more wet and more like, it's really falling through. It's really affecting it. And it's also giving it this depth. You'll see it later when I'm working on it. So, a little backstory is I like to add black onto a page. I don't like adding white to a page. And it's funny because when I listened to that Brian Bolland interview at Cartoonist Kayfabe, which is an awesome YouTube channel, by the way, he says the same thing. So that's how he used to work. I guess it's just like an art preference. A friend of mine in college, she said the same thing too. She likes to add the black into the page. I don't know what it is. It's satisfying. I don't know. I like adding it rather than starting with something black then taking it away, which is And again, just like Brian Bolland, I like comparing myself to Brian Bolland. It's fun. Um, his process now that he's doing digital, he finds he can add the white back on top of his drawings more. I think he's a little bit more comfortable doing it, maybe because he has more control. I don't know. But I found that in this instance, that's exactly what I was doing. I don't like adding white onto any of my drawings. Like any of my ink drawings, no, I just don't do it unless I made a mistake. And then white out is, I have to bust out the white out. But in digital, as I'm trying to do these, you can see on the left side of this panel, I'm adding white. And I think I started doing it early on before everything was done. And I was like, that's kind of cool looking. Let me add some more. And I think because of that addition, it gave it some more depth. It put those raindrops more on the foreground than the background. So I was like, okay, I'll keep that. And then I would just draw over that and over the panel border itself to break through. And then I'm breaking up the panel more with the whites. Right here, I think, is the point where I was like, that white on the lower right looks kind of cool. And I was really tempted to just leave it like this and set it like as if it was snow. It's kind of a cool effect. Maybe I'll do it again some other day, some other time. But for the longest time, I was looking at it and I was like, I just really love that snow effect. I stumbled onto it. I didn't even know what I was doing. But in the end, I decided, all right, I'm just going to fill it all in. It's set in a rainy night at RISD and not when it was snowing. But I do remember a lot of snow when I was going to RISD. And it was pretty. I'm from the Philippines. College was my first time living out. Oh, no. Well, I lived in Hong Kong too. Philippines, Hong Kong. But it's the first time I lived in a country where snow would fall on the ground. And it had the 4 seasons like this. So it was always like this magical thing until the second day of snow and you're just kind of sick of it. In any case, I just decided to hatch the crap on top of that and get rid of that snow. So as I'm doing this, I'm also, this is time lapse, but it took me a while. So I would have good chunks of time in between drawing sessions to kind of take a look and see like what's working and what's not. And I think that's very useful for me because I usually cannot see it. I'm too close to something if I just do it all in one day. So now I got all that grass filled in and I'll have to add in some rain on the other side to kind of finish it off. Add some raindrops, just like what I'm trying to achieve here. And I know I was debating on whether I should ink all the bricks, but that was just stupid. Why would I do that? That's just crazy. And this would be my opening page. I think I like drawing trees like this. They're very free. And there's nothing, you're kind of making up what tree bark looks like as you draw. And looking at and up there where there's no black behind it, it was easier to visualize this tree. That's the end of that time lapse. We'll take a look at a few more of these where it's like close-up shots. And these are the branches. You can see I can be a little bit more free and just totally put things in silhouette, and I don't have to make the water drip from it. And there's places that I can do it and kind of play with lighting that way. This is on the bottom left corner with the sidewalk and the water. And it's funny because I meant it as if the water was the one in white, but you can kind of look at it and think about the water being the one in black. And that works out too. But it's nice to be able to break up just all the hatching that I'm doing, just to give your eye a little rest. I also did a few things like I outlined the tree here. That's on a different level. I outlined the different layer, not different level. Yeah, like I'm I'm on a different level, baby. It's on a different layer, and it's just me drawing a white outline around the tree to make sure that it really does pop out. Like that is where my eye should go as the center point of this drawing. And then there's the little sculpture on There Is the Green, and you can see here like the little round circles, the ripply things that are happening in the grass that add a lot of texture, I think, and break up that grass because it's a little crazy, a little much. And you can see like there's some rain. I think I came back into that sculpture so that it has like rain dripping down more with white. And this is the final page. It'll be a good way to start this short story, and I'm kind of happy with it. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Comics Rant, and I will have more on this short story. See you guys next time.